Hi, everyone. I'm Carrie, and welcome in. We've just begun to dive into the Chandler Halderson case. Now, for those of you that are new, no worries. We only have a few videos thus far, so it's easy to go back to the playlist and start from scratch. So, who is Chandler Halderson? Well, he is a 23-year-old, or at the time, in 2021, when he committed these homicides, he was 23 years old. He had told his mother, his father, his brother, everyone in his life thought that he worked at the American Insurance Company, and also thought that at one point he had even worked with the police department in a diver like rescue type thing where he volunteered with them. He also said that he had been hired on at SpaceX and was going to be relocating to Florida for this job, him and his fiance. He had also told his parents that all this time he had been in college, and he wasn't. He had flunked out of college. His lies caught up to him when his dad started to think something was off. Dad started doing some digging, and dad found out that at least portions of what was going on were lies. His last text to his son was something of the extent of, "It's time to talk. I'm ready when you are, waiting on you." The police say that within an hour of this happening, Chandler murdered his father. Then he turned around, lured his mother back home, after asking her to stop and grab him a soda. When she got home, he unalived her at some point. Hours of specific times of when this all happened, we're not sure because Chandler told everyone that they went away for the 4th of July weekend. So the police say this happened on July 1st, and things didn't really start catching up with him until about July 7th. So he had all these days to get this stuff in order, right? With all that being said, let's get to day one, when the first responders testify. So in this video, we are going to be watching some clips from the Sheriff's Department of Dane County. You have Officer Nelson, Seeley, and Collins Lefevre. These are the first three initial responders when Chandler goes to the sheriff's office to report his mother and father missing. So listen in real closely at the specific details that they're going to give us here on what he told them was going on versus what they saw, which led them to believe that there was more to the story.
Deputy, could you please state your name for the record, spelling both your first and last?
Yep. John Nelson, John, John, Nelson, Nelson. I had just returned back to the precinct from a previous call, and as I was walking through the doors to the precinct, I noticed behind me it appeared that somebody had been coming up to the doors. So I met them at the door, and at that time had a conversation with an individual.
And I'd like to note for the record, the witness did make a hand gesture towards the defendant as well. I'd like to note for the record that the witness has identified Mr. Halderson.
It will.
What did you learn from Mr. Halderson on July 7th, 2021?
When he came to the precinct and spoke to me, he said that he wanted to make a missing persons report. He told me that he wanted to report that his parents were missing. I asked who his parents were. He said Bart and Krista Halderson. When I heard that they lived in the village of Windsor, we have a Windsor contract deputy that was working, so I immediately called to see whether or not they were available to come up to take the missing persons report.
Okay. Were they available?
They were.
Okay, and who is that?
Deputy Josh Seeley.
Okay.
So I remained at the precinct in our day room area with Chandler Halderson until Deputy Seeley arrived. And at that point, Deputy Seeley began interviewing him in the day room. I was present during that portion of the interview.
How would you describe the defendant's affect, his demeanor?
He seemed quiet, what I would describe as maybe like lethargic. Seemed like maybe he was tired as he was describing the fact that he had not seen his parents since the previous week. It just seemed like he was slow to respond to some of the questions. He had said that his parents had gone up to their cabin, which I believe was in White Lake, Wisconsin, that they had left the previous week. He thought early Friday morning, and that he had not seen his parents since then, and that at this point he wanted to report them as a missing persons. He had said that they had left with another couple, but he did not know who the couple was and had not seen the couple, just that they had left sometime early, what he believed to be early Friday morning. He said that they had left in the other person's vehicle because both the vehicles that belonged to his family were still at the residence, but I did not have a description of the other vehicle. So after he was interviewed by Deputy Seeley, we determined that probably the best course of action was for us to go back to the residence to kind of check out the residence. So I told Deputy Seeley that I would accompany him back to the residence for that.
So you went to that address. What did you do once you were there?
So myself and Deputy Seeley had gone into the residence, and at this point, Deputy Seeley was planning on continuing his interviews with him, with Chandler. And I did ask Chandler if we could just walk through the residence real quick. I asked where his parents' bedroom was, and so we went from the main floor. When you walk into the residence, you step into the entry area, and then there's a living room and a kitchen. There's a flight of steps that go down to like a basement, and then a flight of steps that go up to what I would consider to be the second level of the residence. And so he took me upstairs to the second level. We walked through his parents' bedroom so that I could take a look around. And basically, my portion inside the residence of just kind of walking around was the upper level and the main level, which would be the living room, kitchen, and dining room.
In walking around the two upper levels, did anything seem off or obvious of a crime at that point?
Of a crime, no.
Okay.
The furniture itself was set like you would normally think of, couch and some other seats. But I did notice that they were covered with linen or blankets.
And were they covered while you were there or before you even entered the home?
They were covered before I entered the home.
So there's 4 levels to the home, but the home's only 2 stories high because they kind of offset each other. Is that a fair description?
Correct.
Okay.
So we started asking him whether or not there were any other persons that lived at the house. He said it was just him and his parents. I asked if he had any siblings. He told me he had a brother named Mitchell. So I was able to get Mitchell's contact information, and my plan was to start doing some secondary interviews to determine if anybody had seen Bart or Krista Halderson.
So you go interviewing the brother Mitchell and other people in the circle?
Correct.
Okay. During the course of this investigation, did you have any other direct contact with Mr. Halderson?
Halderson as a Chandler?
As in Chandler, I'm sorry, the defendant.
I was pretty much in his presence most of that afternoon and evening.
During the course of that afternoon and evening, did you observe Mr. Halderson using a vape pen at all?
Yes. We did contact our ISB, which is our detective division, as we felt that there was enough information now that there might be a reason to get detectives involved. So they were contacted that day. As far as getting involved in other cases, I pretty much stayed on this case all that day and all the next day.
Okay. Nothing further.
Cross-examination.
Yes, thank you. Deputy Nelson, you walked through the house, correct?
Yes,
You walked upstairs,
I walked upstairs to the top floor.
downstairs,
No, well, it depends. Downstairs being,
that second level that you were talking about.
so that day that I was there, the only floors I went to when you walk in would be what would be the living room, the kitchen, dining room, and then up to the second floor, which would be the bedrooms and I believe a laundry room and bathroom.
Okay. But at some point you did become familiar with the whole house
At some point that day or it?
throughout the course of this investigation?
Yes,
And they being the Haldersons, were doing renovations in that house, correct?
yes.
No further questions, thank you.
Good morning. Please state and spell your name for us.
Josh Seeley, Seeley.
And what do you do for a living, sir?
Deputy Sheriff at the Dane County Sheriff's Office. Currently, I perform full-time patrol duties for the Village of Windsor.
And they don't have their own police department?
They do not.
And so they have a contract with the Dane County Sheriff's Office?
Correct.
I'm going to take you over to July 7th of 2021. That day, were you asked to respond over to the Northeast Precinct for someone referencing a missing persons complaint?
I did, yes.
Another deputy asked you
Yeah.
to come over.
Yep, I heard a radio call from Deputy Nelson stating that there was someone at the Northeast Precinct, what we would call a walk-in, and wanted to report a missing persons. So I responded up to the Northeast Precinct to make contact.
Are walk-ins common at the Northeast Precinct?
Not typically, no. Most people call.
This person didn't call.
They did not.
Okay. You went over there,
I did.
and tell me what you found when you got to the Northeast Precinct.
So I walked into the Northeast Precinct, what we would call the day room. It's where we have our desk and computers. And sitting at the table was a male who I later identified with Wisconsin driver's license as Chandler Halderson, and Deputy Nelson of the Dane County Sheriff's Office. Asked him more or less what was going on, and he proceeded to tell me that he had not had contact with his parents, that they had gone up to their cabin, which is up north in Langley County, and he was concerned. He stated that he had left their residence, which is in the village of Windsor, and had left with friends, and that they had gone up to this cabin to work on a fire pit and a water pump that might have been damaged during a storm. He did not mention anything about a car, and he provided some names of people that he might have gone up there, or that they have gone up there with, but he was not for sure who they had gone with. Initially, we released Chandler from the Northeast Precinct, had a conversation with Deputy Nelson, at which point then we drove down to the residence down on Oak Springs in the village of Windsor, where we again made contact with Chandler.
Is that here in Dane County, Wisconsin?
And that's in the Dane County, yep.
You probably know this neighborhood as good as anyone being assigned there, but just tell us about that general area they live. What's it like?
It's very well kept, very quiet. It's a two-way street.
And the Halderson home is on the middle of the block on Oak Springs.
It's in the middle of the block on the north side of the road, yep.
In general, the Halderson home is one of many homes in that area that's on a pond that's behind the house, correct?
Correct.
When you get to the house, did you go right in or did you stay outside and talk for a while?
We just briefly made contact with Chandler outside, at which point we were invited inside. And then we continued our conversation and interview inside the residence.
Sure. Where'd you go in the house when you first went in?
Immediately, just like in your standard entryway, open up to the living room and dining room area. At which point he asked us if we wanted to look around the house, at which point I said yes. I believe the first place he took me was upstairs, went up the stairway, pointed out some bedrooms and another room that was off to the left, which I observed was under construction or renovation. So is down to the studs and insulation. There's nothing else in there except some laundry machines. After that, went back down to the main living area, at which point he went partially downstairs. I did not go downstairs, but he did point out a set of couches that had been pushed together. And he stated that he had been sleeping down there because it was closer to a bathroom that was downstairs.
Let's talk about that for a second. The room in which the couches were pushed together, was that the room with the fireplace in it? One of the fireplaces?
I believe so, yes.
And you say they were pushed together. What do you mean by that, if you could describe it better?
So if you think of your average couch and how it looks, take another couch and push it up against it so it looks just like a square or a box. And that's what he was using as a bed, supposedly.
And he told you that that was needed because it was close to the bathroom?
Correct.
Did Chandler tell you why it was important that he be close to the bathroom?
Just that the room that was upstairs and under construction was the other bathroom, and there was no functioning plumbing up there at that point, I guess.
Sure. Were you talking to Mr. Halderson around this time and kind of interviewing him further as he was showing you around the house?
I did. At one point, he did hold up a neck brace and said that was another reason why he had been downstairs. But again, started to ask him again about why he felt that his parents were missing. And he stated that he had attempted multiple phone calls to try and get a hold of them, and the phone had gone straight to voicemail.
Did you at some point attempt to call Bart and Krista Halderson using the numbers that Chandler was able to provide you?
I did. And again, my phone calls went right to voicemail as I tried to contact their phones.
All of these folks that you said Chandler gave a few names of people potentially that he thought his parents might be with, friends and things of that sort, were those people contacted ultimately?
He was able to provide me with one phone number for the names that he provided me. And from that point on, we were able to get additional contact info for those people. So we started reaching out to them. I also asked about employment information for the two subjects, at which point he provided those. So again, we started reaching out to employers, all in attempts to try and get in contact with them.
At this point, maybe you'd call this kind of your standard missing person stuff.
Pretty standard, yeah.
Were any of those conversations with potential people that the Haldersons might be with fruitful? Meaning, did you learn that they were with any of those people?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled, you can answer.
From the contacts that were had while I was there, no one had contact with the two subjects.
When you were in the Halderson home, did he walk you down into the actual basement of the house?
I personally did not go into the basement, no.
Did Chandler make any comments to you about things his parents may have packed before going to the cabin?
He did. He stated that they had grabbed several bottles of liquor. He said the norm that they might take a bottle or two, which would include a bottle of wine. He then went on to tell me that his father had grabbed a large sum of cash, about $4,000, and this was also unusual, saying that they would only usually take a couple hundred and that maybe they were going to a casino at this point.
Did he give you any time on when he thought his parents had left?
He was very specific and stated that they had left at 6 a.m., which I believe was on July 2nd.
6 a.m. on the Friday?
On Friday, yes.
Okay. Did he say that he saw them leave?
He did not.
At any point in your contact with Mr. Halderson, either at the precinct or at the home, was he actually wearing that neck brace that he showed you?
He was not wearing the neck brace, no.
What was his demeanor like as he was making these reports to you? How was he acting?
He seemed very matter of fact, just as you would be telling someone about your day. To me, there was no sense of urgency.
Did he cry at any point or anything like that?
He did not.
No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Deputy Seeley, had you ever met Chandler Halderson before?
Not that I can recall, no.
That's all, thank you.
Good morning. Could you please state your name for the record, spelling both your first and last names?
Deputy Haley Collins Lefevre, Hayley, COLLINS-LA, capital FEVRE.
How are you employed?
I'm employed as a deputy sheriff with the Dane County Sheriff's Office.
When did you first become involved in the Halderson case, the missing person case of Bart and Krista Halderson?
I had received some communication with my partner, Deputy Seeley, prior to the start of my shift on July 7th, stating that he requested that I respond to the Halderson home shortly after checking on. And that's how I became informed and notified of the call.
And about what time was that? Do you remember?
Shortly after 1 p.m.
Okay. And do you in fact go to the home?
I did go to the residence.
What did you do once you got to the house?
I met Deputy Seeley outside on the front porch, and he just briefly summarized for me the information that he had already gathered. Deputy Seeley took a phone call, and then at that point I went inside the home and was introduced to Chandler.
And did you end up talking with Mr. Halderson?
I did.
Okay. What, if anything, did Mr. Halderson tell you about his parents being missing?
Well, I was a little hesitant to ask a lot of follow-up questions because I knew Deputy Seeley had already asked him a lot. But in the small talk that we had, it began with me asking if his parents had had any medical issues.
Okay, and what did you learn?
He told me that his dad, his psoriasis had recently flared up and that he also needed stronger reading glasses. In regards to his mom, he said that the week prior, she had been diagnosed with skin cancer.
Okay.
He had said, in regards to the skin cancer, I'd asked about how did his mom take that, what was her demeanor, and And he said that she was very nonchalant about the diagnosis, that it had been, she had known about this for about 15 years, but the actual diagnosis had been just the week prior.
Why did you ask about those medical conditions?
Just to determine if for their safety, if we should be doing a bit more on our end from a law enforcement standpoint. In addition to the skin cancer, he had mentioned that she had had a mini stroke a few years prior. And as a result, she had brain lesions, which now that she was experiencing frequent headaches and some forgetfulness and also a change in her speech. So we were also possibly concerned of a medical issue with Mrs. Halderson.
Sure. What did you do next?
Continued to speak with him, asked a variety of questions, again, just small talk and, again, not trying to maybe ask the same questions that Deputy Seeley had done, but continued small talk with Chandler.
At some point, does he talk to you about what his parents took to the cabin?
He did. He told me that he had helped his parents pack on Thursday, July 1st, and that they had packed their own bags for clothing, but he had helped his mom pack her medication, and had also packed for them some tools. Also food, phone chargers, and then tools. And when I asked him specifically what tools he had helped pack for them, he said they were all for cabin repairs, and they included a wrench, a hatchet, a bow saw, some additional saw blades, as well as 2 10-gallon containers for gasoline.
Okay. Did he talk to you about any cash or valuables that were packed?
He did. He told me that he was aware that his parents had taken a large sum of cash out of a safe. He did not disclose to me any sort of estimate as to the amount of cash, but that there was a large sum of cash taken from a safe that they took with them, and also a larger than normal amount of alcohol that they took also.
Did he elaborate on the need for the cash or the alcohol or anything else to the best of your recollection?
In regards to the cash, no, he did not know why they would have taken that much. As far as the alcohol, he assumed that given his mom's recent cancer diagnosis, that maybe she was a bit more stressed and overwhelmed, and that has led to more alcoholic drinking by his mom.
Who, if anyone, did Chandler Halderson say picked up his parents?
He claimed that he did not know the couple that picked them up. He said, and I asked a variety of ways multiple times, trying to determine if we could figure out who these people were. And he claimed that he had also asked his parents on Thursday the 1st who these friends were that he was going with, and they were not direct with him and never told him the friends that they were going up to the cabin with.
Did Chandler Halderson give you any information about the time his parents supposedly left to go to the cabin?
He did. He told me that he woke up at 6:15 a.m. on Friday the 2nd, and his parents were not home. So he told me that his estimated time frame of when they left was somewhere between 4 a.m. and 6:15 a.m. When I asked him why he felt that was the time frame, he again reiterated that he had woken up at 6:15 and they weren't there, and that any time before 4 a.m. didn't seem like a realistic time frame that his parents would have gotten up to leave for the cabin.
Sure. What other sorts of information were you trying to learn at that point in time in talking with Chandler?
Again, just trying to, it seemed odd that there were a lot of details given for other things in regards to medical history and what he helped them pack, but in regards to them actually physically leaving and who they were with, there were not as many details, which seemed a bit unusual.
At any point did you inquire as to what Bart and Krista Halderson typically wore as far as clothing?
I did. Again, if we were...
Why did you ask for that information?
Again, if we were trying to potentially, of course, in a situation like this, our minds are kind of going all over the place and trying to think of all the possibilities and things that could have happened. So as a way for us to maybe more easily identify them or be able to pass information along to maybe other agencies or other resources to try and help them, wanted to be able to provide as much information as possible. And so I did ask if they are known to wear certain types of clothing on a fairly regular basis. And he said that his mom generally wears long sleeve shirts and baseball hats and would be wearing light blue Brooks brand shoes. And that his dad was likely wearing cargo shorts, also Brooks brand shoes, and t-shirts that generally have some sort of graphic or like a beer logo or something on them.
Were they described as cheesy dad joke t-shirts?
Yes, they were, yes.
So you walked around the home. What, if anything, did you observe?
So it's a tri-level home where you walk in and it's the main level with the living room, dining area, and a kitchen. And there were blankets or canvas like over some of the furniture in the living room. Dining room table, lots of mail and things on the table. And the kitchen didn't seem to be anything overly glaring that would have.
Let's talk about that table. You said there was mail and things on it. Were there any like notes or instructions or anything that seemed to have been laid out?
Yes, Chandler had told me that he had a doctor's.
Objection. I think the officer's going to lead into something that's going to call for hearsay.
I don't know if I know enough about the question to rule.
I may have jumped the gun a little too much, but I'll get
Let me
there.
go ahead and have the question restated or stated as you asked it.
Sure. What did you observe on the dining room table?
I observed several insurance cards that Chandler claimed were left out by his mom because he was going to be having, or had a couple days prior had told me that he had a doctor's appointment, and so his mom left the insurance cards out for him. There was also a note that he claimed was written by his mom saying,
Objection, hearsay.
What were the contents of that note, and what did Mr. Halderson tell you about the note, if anything?
the note stated something to the effect of, I hope you have a great day. And then it left a phone number for Pam, and it said just in case on the note. And Chandler told me that that was a note left by his mom for him.
In connection to their visit to the cabin?
Yes,
So does this appear to be the actual note that you observed on the dining room table?
it appears it is, yes.
Roughly does the note say, "Good morning, Chandler, hope your day goes really well. Pam," and a phone number, and just in case, and a heart, and just signed you?
Yes.
Did Mr. Halderson give you any context of this note? Why would a 23-year-old, did you have any information as to why a 23-year-old was being left a neighbor's number?
He stated that a few weeks prior to our contact with him on the 7th, he had fallen down the stairs in the home and had hit the front and back of his head, which resulted in a concussion, and he said also a small hemorrhage in his brain. His mom was very concerned about leaving him alone for the weekend with no one else at the home to kind of care for him or make sure that he was okay. So he told me that this note was left with Pam's phone number to have Pam, or I'm sorry, for him to call Pam if he needed anything while they were gone over the weekend.
Did he tell you any other side effects or medical issues as a result of this fall?
Recall that he said he was having headaches and some tingling in his legs.
Did he tell you anything about any upcoming doctor's appointments or doctor's appointments that were scheduled to have occurred?
For himself, I believe it was for Monday the 5th. He had said he had a doctor's appointment scheduled. And then his mom also had an appointment on July 7th, which was also cause for concern for him because he claimed then she has now missed the appointment because she had not returned home.
During the course of your investigation, did Mr. Halderson present any proof or any evidence that he had been contacted by his parents since July 1st, 2021?
Yes, he had shown me a text message on his phone that he stated was from his mom, and he'd received that shortly after 11 a.m. on July 4th. And it stated something to the effect of, "We made it, we're going to a parade, and we will be home late Monday or early Tuesday."
And of course, you're meeting on a Wednesday.
Correct.
Mr. Halderson. At some point during the course of your part of the investigation, do you have Mr. Halderson fill out missing person certifications?
Yes, I did.
Can you describe what those are?
Yes, so in law enforcement, we have this form that we fill out for a missing persons report, and there's some criteria that need to be met. It can consist of someone who is physically or mentally disabled, someone under the age of 21 who we feel is in physical, they're in harm's way, someone who has been abducted or kidnapped, things like that. And Mr. Halderson was the one filling out the form, stating that he was wanting to list his parents as missing, and it met criteria 6, which is that the person is over the age of 21 and they don't meet any of the above criteria, but there is reason to believe that their safety is in jeopardy. Exhibit 2 are the original copies of the missing persons forms, both filled out for Mr. Halderson and Mrs. Halderson. I signed the form as the witness for Mr. Halderson, and the form is signed by Detective Sims for Krista Halderson, and it's in a sealed evidence bag.
And did Chandler Halderson sign either or both of the forms of Exhibit 2?
He signed both forms.
On the date that they were reported missing, how old was Bart Halderson?
Marked as 50 years old.
And how old was Krista Halderson?
53 years old.
Sorry, they do not teach us how to work these. But just briefly, Deputy, the first form is for Bart Halderson,
Yes.
and the signature on that is for Chandler Halderson, dated July 7th of 2021.
Yes.
And then the second form is for a Krista Halderson,
Yes.
and again, signed and dated by Chandler Halderson on July 7th of 2021.
Yes.
No further questions.
Cross-examination. May this witness be excused and released from her subpoena.
Yes, Your Honor.
So there you have it. That is the condensed version of the first 3 witnesses in the trial. And our next video will have a live stream, and we'll watch the full testimony of the first detective that was brought in, and we'll look at some crime scene photos and such. So stay tuned, everybody, and thank you so much for watching.